Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Hammond, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat, of course, a Blue Wire podcast. Joining me today, KCRA 3, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
Spectacular. The NFL preseason. I was just reminded again how much I hate the NFL preseason. Right before we go on there, Sean, Brenden goes, "Hey, Sean, you were at Niners, right? How was that? That was fun, huh?" No, NFL preseason is dreck. I'm glad it's behind us, and let's look forward to some real football. And all that means is that basketball season is getting that much more closer. So, yeah, I'm doing great because that shit is behind us.
That's exactly what Kyle Madsen says. We are, of course, joined also by Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast and other things. Brenden, how are you?
I'm doing well. Nothing to complain about over here. Unlike Sean, I'm going to keep the vibes high best I can.
I said I was doing great. I'm spectacular.
Yeah, I'm doing great.
happy.
But here's all the things that are wrong.
They were wrong. They were in the rear view. We've passed. We've moved on.
Yeah, it's hot. That's the one thing. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like it's kind of been trying to avoid the heat a little bit last week. But it's still been a super mild summer. Has it hit 100 more than like 3 times? It's crazy.
A few. It's been, yeah. I think it's been over maybe, I think it's less than 10, which is,
I think it's like you said, way less than 10. Yeah.
Well, in Sacramento, you live up in Nevada someplace, so that's a little bit different. Up here in this, it gets a little bit warm.
It's usually about 5 degrees cooler. It can get a little more like 7 degrees cooler, but yeah, it's cooler on the water. That's for sure. Even a hot day, like we went out on Saturday and hung out on the water forever, and it was actually chilly at one point. And I look at my watch and it says it's 92. I'm like, oh, this is weird. It happens. Welcome in the Kings Beat podcast. If you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. If you're listening wherever you listen to the podcast, give us a rating and review. We would appreciate that as well. But we are officially in sort of no man's land in the NBA landscape. But there is little bits of news. Jonathan Kuminga is still not a Sacramento King. And that's looking less and less likely.
Nor a Golden State Warrior.
He's also not a Golden State Warrior, which is just messing with everything. They have until, we talked about this, they have until October 1st to for him to either accept the qualifying offer, play for $7.9 million, decline the qualifying offer. Not decline, take a contract with the Warriors, or the two sides could get together and negotiate a later date for that decision to have to be made. Like, I don't know, October 15th or something like that. So there's still some variables here. I'm going to guess Golden State Warriors do not want to do that, extend the date. So we'll probably see some sort of conclusion here in the coming weeks. And whether he's a Sacramento King or not, we'll have to figure that one out.
You want to place a bet?
Oh, yeah, that sounds good.
Okay,
what do we got?
First. You go first.
On whether
the season,
just the Kuminga situation, what will happen? I think we did this last week, to be honest, or whenever.
No, we talked a little bit about it, like where we thought it might go, but I don't know, Brenden, you look like someone who is ready to make a wager.
Do I? I mean, I think this offseason, I don't think he's going to end up in Sacramento. I think that he probably stays with the Warriors, and I'm kind of leaning towards qualifying offer right now, I guess, if I had to take a side.
Okay.
That was what I predicted in the last one. I said I don't think he'll be a Sacramento King, at least for this year. And whatever that looks like beyond, if he tests an unrestricted free agent, or if he goes in as unrestricted free agent, he could find a way to Sacramento. Obviously, they'd have to rework the roster at that point. But I do feel that he is going to be back with the Warriors, the same situation that Brenden said.
Okay. Let's see. My guess is he takes the 2-year, $45 million deal and lives to fight another day as far as a potential trade candidate. And I think it's possible that the Kings chase him again and try to acquire him mid-season. How about that?
It's a different wrinkle.
Yeah, because
there is the no trade clause at that point, right? Or sorry, there is no trade clause.
Well, there is a no trade clause because the 2-year deal that they're offering right now is a second year is a team option.
Right.
Unless the second year is guaranteed, then there is a no trade clause that goes with it. So I'm going to guess that he'll waive the no trade clause if he can be traded to the right spot. But the Warriors want him to waive the no trade clause right away. And then I could see a world in which another team says, okay, like a much bigger trade, but someone doesn't want Kuminga as much as they might want a different player, like a Malik or someone else. And, so there could be part of a 3-team trade down the road. That's my guess. Although I do think it's still possible they swing for the fences here and get him.
There's part of me that wonders, like from the Warriors standpoint, if they're essentially trying to call his bluff with the qualifying offer, that if he reaches the point where, he confirms with them, hey, I'm going to sign this, that's when the Warriors are like, all right, he's actually going to do it. Let's get a deal done prior to that.
Yeah, he definitely is letting it very well known that he intends to play for the qualifying offer if they continue to have the offer that they have on the table. So I don't think, I mean, again, I think in the end, cooler heads will prevail. And that's why I do think that there's still a door that's open here for the Kings to sneak in and be able to land him as a player. But there isn't like a perfect natural fit here for any of these people, any of these groups. There's also, let's dive into this other thing that Mark Stein decided to throw out there this weekend. The Sacramento Kings have been, of course, linked to Russell Westbrook for the better part of like 6 weeks. And I think it's interesting, but it doesn't make a lot of sense with their roster the way it currently stands. Malik Monk's name has been brought up nonstop in trade rumors all over the place. And someone who, clearly has been available this summer. And I think that, maybe it's not a huge surprise, but maybe for some people it is, because Malik Monk has been very, very productive in Sacramento and he's under contract for another 3 years. But we have this new wrinkle where all of a sudden Malik Monk is not available, and they're kind of pulling him back in and saying, hey, no, he's part of the family. And, oh, by the way, we might still sign Russell Westbrook. I don't know what that would look like, but I want to run this by you guys because I don't see a way in which a Russell Westbrook, Dennis Schroeder, Malik Monk, Zach LaVine, Keon Ellis, Devin Carter backcourt actually works. And maybe that because I'm crazy, but I also don't like that, you just don't have any space for something like that. Like you only got 96 minutes in the backcourt, and that's a whole lot more than 96 minutes worth of player. So where are you guys at?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Russ fit is weird in general. I think where it does make sense is the, 6 principles, or more so, I guess, intangibles that Scott Perry wants from guys, the off-court identity and personality. I think Russ fits into that. He has a little bit of a weird reputation, I would say, amongst fan bases, but it feels like, and correct me if you guys have heard differently, but it feels like most players around the league seem to love him. I think there is having that sort of influence on the young players, but when it comes to the on-court fit, I'm kind of with you, James. I think it's a little bit questionable. I think adding a backup point guard does make a little bit of sense for this team, but I would prioritize like a backup 4, for example. We've talked about, I don't know how to feel about Dario Saric going into next season. I don't feel great about it. And yeah, the spacing that you mentioned, I think the aspect of, as cliche as it is, there's only one ball. That's where Russ functions most ideally. I know he worked off of guys like Jokic and others in years prior. And I think he finished 7th in 6th Man of the Year voting each of the last 2 years, for what it's worth. So take that for what you will. But it's very much like you would go through the Russell Westbrook experience. He's going to have moments where he just absolutely changes the energy of a game in a positive and negative way. And I kind of think you already have some of those guys. So I get having the tone setter from the point guard position. Russ is probably the prime example of that, which is what Scott Perry says he's looked at for that position. But I think the spacing, I don't see why this is somebody that they should necessarily be prioritizing right now at this point in their roster building.
Yeah, if your roster stays the same, and you didn't even mention Terrence Davis, who probably doesn't factor in at all after training camp. So, if the roster stays the same, there's just no room for him, and there's no look positionless basketball to a degree, but in those guards, you only have, like, in my mind, probably 3 that are capable of playing multiple positions. And if you play some of the others at multiple positions, it's probably not very good. So I don't think it's interesting because I feel like there are people that like him and like what he can bring. And let's be honest, you really only have one really true point guard. And so maybe in the evaluation eyes that they look at Russell Westbrook as being that true point guard, bringing a legend into a mix like this, who has all kinds of experience, who's capable of doing so many things, even at his advanced state. I get that point to a degree, but shouldn't you be better? Like, shouldn't you be better? I mean, he's a sieve defensively. And again, we've talked about the positives of what he can be in terms of, especially last year with Denver. I mean, he had that type of positive impact on that team, and he was able to withstand the rigors of a 82 game schedule and play at a high level and play well with Nikola Jokic. That we get all that, but I just don't know the true value there if the roster stays the same. If you open up a spot, then yeah, I mean, you wouldn't hear me complain. I think that would be fine if one of these guards fall off. But as Brenden says, I still think there's a little bit of an imbalance. I think they all know that there's going to be a roster imbalance. You'll probably go into the season with a little bit of a roster imbalance to begin with, and I think they're okay with that to a degree. I think they want to be flexible to be able to make a move at any point, but maybe the landscape of things has to shift some. And we talked about the Kuminga stuff. That's just kind of holding up a lot of things right now. I would almost argue that maybe you shouldn't let this hold you up, because while it is kind of a swing for the fences type move and quite a dramatic shift for your organization, if you're able to land someone like Kuminga, the reality is it's not. I just don't think it's going to happen. And I think a lot of people within that building have for weeks now have moved on. I don't think that they're sitting there holding, their fingers crossed behind their back, hoping that something happens between now and October. So, maybe, but I think the reality is the NBA landscape is what it is now, and you just kind of have to make the most of it. And I think you have an intriguing team, even though it may have some imbalance. I just don't think adding Russell Westbrook really makes all that much sense as the team is constituted presently.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, part of the issues that I have is that Russ just isn't a good 3-point shooter. Dennis Schroeder isn't a good 3-point shooter. Malik Monk is a spotty 3-point shooter. Like, all of a sudden you're running into this issue that this team just doesn't have enough shooting. Like, if there's a way that you somehow land both Russell Westbrook and Jonathan Kuminga, like, you'd be the worst 3-point shooting team in the league, and it wouldn't even be close. Like, the floor spacing is just going to be an abomination. Like,
that takes away from, like, you're adding a lot of athleticism, but how much can you utilize that without proper spacing?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult to do anything, right? I mean, teams are just gonna sag off the Kings, and they're just gonna clog the lane, and they're gonna take away Domas because he likes to run at the nail. And if you're gonna have to push him out above the 3-point line the whole time, and you're gonna have to use him as a 3-point shooter. Even right now, their starting lineup that include Schroeder and DeMar DeRozan is going to have major spacing issues with Domas. And it's because Domas doesn't shoot enough threes, but the same thing can be said about DeMar, and the same thing can be said about Dennis Schroeder. Not only are Schroeder and DeMar not great 3-point shooters, they don't shoot enough threes to keep the spacing and to keep the defense honest. And so I think the Kings are going to have major, major issues, like, right away, unless they've got some sort of, super complex offense that we haven't seen yet that maybe can change the way this all works out. I like Russell Westbrook on this team if Malik Monk were traded. And I'm not advocating trading Malik Monk so you can have Russell Westbrook. I'm just saying that if Monk wasn't there, Russell Westbrook might make a lot of sense.
Would they be better?
As a stopgap?
No,
absolutely
What's
not.
that?
Like, would they be better with Russ?
Would you be better?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. No, but I can understand that if you're using Malik to get better at a different position, like we say, no, if you swap out Monk for Westbrook, I do not think you get better there.
Correct.
But you might get better with the player that you get for Monk.
You might find your stretch 4 at that point.
Yeah,
but
if you're
who
just
is that?
dumping Monk, yeah, because that's not Kuminga. Kuminga's not a stretch 4. I mean, he can play the 4, but he doesn't shoot the ball well enough to be a stretch 4. So I just see a lot of issues. We had someone bring up something today in the chat that when I was on the Insiders with Kyle, would you chase somebody else at this point? Well, look, I think the way that I read Mark Stein's piece, his comments were that the Kings would like to, maybe restructure that backcourt and find a different way without getting rid of Monk to bring in Westbrook. And to me, that means there's only 2 ways to do that, because Dennis Schroeder can't be traded until December 15th at the earliest. That means that either Keon Ellis or Zach LaVine are no longer there. So,
or Devin Carter.
Well, yeah, but what is?
But that's not. Yeah, that's a.
Yeah, is he in your rotation?
They've already tried to look at that. I think this summer anyway. So.
Well, let's be honest. Like Devin Carter's either not going to play at all. He's going to play the entire season in Stockton, or he's going to play like not a whole lot of minutes, like as a 5th guard and a backup to the backup. Like, I mean, I'm not like speaking out of turn here. I mean, if you've got, let's just go through it. If you're going to, Devin Carter, if Malik Monk is going to play 24 minutes a game and you're going to get 28 minutes out of Dennis Schroeder, you're already 4 minutes over your allotment at the point guard position. And then if Zach LaVine's going to play 32 minutes and you want Keon Ellis to play anywhere from 24 to 30 minutes, like that's more than 48 minutes. You're all of a sudden looking at like a negative surplus minutes in the backcourt of, I don't know, 12 minutes. Like, where do you come up with those 12 minutes unless Zach LaVine is going to play a whole bunch of small forward? And I don't think that's part of the plan either. So I just think it puts the Kings in a weird situation.
Although it could be. I mean, they're going to make some tweaks to this offense coming into the season. I think they realize that their answer is probably to go small.
They don't have much choice.
You don't have that. Yeah, I mean, you have no bigs. So I don't think that that's too much of a stretch there, James. I think that's honestly, if the roster is what it is, these are the things you're going to see, especially being a team that has so many mid-range type players on there. So you already mentioned their lack of 3-point shooting. If Doug has this idea that they're going to try to still hoist up threes the way that he would like in a prototypical
modern day offense,
NBA offense, then you kind of have to go small in order to find some of the things you're looking for from the perimeter.
Yeah, didn't Doug say 53s at one point last year?
But he said it like tongue in cheek, right?
Yeah, he walked it back. He's like, we're just aiming high and we'll actually be around the 40 mark or whatever.
He was hoping 40, 45. Yeah.
Yeah. This team, to the point, probably not the most ideal way to do that. But I think to what you're saying, Sean, that this team's going to have to go small. Like they don't have much of a choice. This is why I've been mentioning like the idea of, I think that, it could make sense to have DeMar be your first sub, and then he's essentially your backup 4. Like we've talked about it. I don't feel great about Dario Saric in that spot. Maybe Isaac Jones can develop into that or something. But DeMar a little bit slower. I guess you can use that strength a little bit. It's not like him guarding Aaron Gordon last year was always the greatest recipe or anything like that necessarily, but it might be better than him guarding on the perimeter. And again, like what are your options here?
Well, the problem with going small is that you don't have the defenders to go small. I mean, like typically if you go like full on small ball, it's usually with a team that can defend.
You're not awful. I mean, again, you'd be putting a lot on the shoulders of someone like Nate Clifford. Keon Ellis is a fantastic defender.
Yeah.
Schroeder can defend, and Devin Carter, like it or not, can defend. So maybe that's his his
If he
entry
plays,
into that scenario. So like you only have a couple guards. I mean, look, yeah, Malik's not great and Zach's worse defensively, right? So
Yeah.
but outside of there, you do have those are guys that are going to get big minutes, but you do have role players that pick up a lot of defense. And if Neat Clifford is factoring into this equation as a longer player, that could become very, very valuable.
Yeah, but DeMar DeRozan is not a good defender at all. And especially, if you're asking all of a sudden play up. Like DeMar spent his last 2 years in Chicago basically playing like free safety. And, the Kings tried that a little bit last year, but there's no way to disguise it. It's just like, and he'll be 36 this year. So I'm not expecting him all of a sudden to be better defensively, just like I don't expect Zach LaVine. So, just like the roster imbalance, the roster construction still lends itself to like major changes have to be made at some point, and you're hoping it's sooner rather than later. I just can't imagine, again, going small ball. Most teams that go small ball is because they have an elite defender that they can put at center that can play, goalkeeper for everybody. Even if they don't play, they're not a shot blocker, say like Draymond Green, like they can, at least he's an elite defender with, an astronomical basketball IQ that is like absolutely fine holding a back line up of smaller players. But that's just not how the Kings are built. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a problem, and I'm hoping that they figure out a way to at least make an adjustment or two. If we're under the premise that they might try to squeeze Westbrook onto this roster one way or another, what would you do with the Zach LaVine, Keon Ellis situation? Because that seems to be the one spot where you might actually be able to make some sort of trade. And, they're two players that not only on the court are like polar opposites. One is a 3-and-D defender and one of them is an offensive juggernaut. But financially, one of them makes $47 million, the other one makes 2.
2.5, right?
2.3, I think. It's not even 2.5. Yeah. No, I mean, Neat Clifford makes a whole lot more. I think makes more than Keon Ellis this year. So, like, how do you figure that one out? Because for me, like, I think the easiest way for the Kings to actually address the power forward need or the small forward need and to clear up some of the backcourt stuff would be to try to find a home for Zach LaVine. But I just don't know that that's functionally possible.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I tend to think that like if you did that and say it's not one of obviously those guys being relocated, we're dealing with everybody on the roster and Russ guard wise. I mean, I kind of think you should do this in general, and I don't think it's going to be the most, popular take with Kings fans, but I think that you should be listening about Keon when it comes to trades. Like, the Kings aren't in a position where we're expecting them to be a notably good team competing in the West over the next couple of years. He's more of a complementary piece that I just think that you could see a scenario if he's this Alex Caruso type player, and that's the idea. And I don't know that he's viewed that way quite yet. It's a tough one to say for some reason. That, Chicago went and did a Josh Giddey trade. Like, if you can get younger, I think I would very much explore dealing Keon. I'm not saying that, hey, that's what you need to do to clear up space. But I definitely would explore that. I think it probably should be explored no matter, given the current position of the team. But if everybody's there and you're not moving somebody like that, then I think that it should be Russ and Malik competing for minutes. Like, I don't think that you bring Russell Westbrook in at this point where it doesn't seem like many other teams are interested, and he should just be guaranteed a role. It seems like that may be what's the conversation already going on between Russ and the Kings, but I personally think that it should be him and Malik competing for that backup point guard spot, essentially.
Sean?
I mean, I don't really have much to add there, to be honest. I mean, it's I think there's people within obviously the organization that are fans of Zach LaVine for sure. But when you are Scott Perry and you're inheriting this team and you have a player that makes so much money as he does, it's nothing against his skill set. I mean, any team would love to have Zach LaVine, but not at $50 million plus. So that is a trickier dynamic to navigate when you're not a good team. So he should, I mean, with respect to Zach, like if I get in there, I'm trying to look at trading him in the worst way to try to free up money to be able to rebuild or retool or revamp or whatever, word you want to use.
Something you want.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes that shuffling a lot much easier. Now, that being said, it's just not that realistic. I mean, I just don't think that moving Zach LaVine is a move. Like, for example, if all of a sudden you put, a for sale sign on Keon Ellis, you have a ton of teams lining up. And if you're the Kings, you're trying to attach a bigger contract to him because he doesn't make any money right now. And I think any team that's looking to trade for Keon Ellis would also, excuse me, they would also have to have some sort of guarantee that Keon is going to extend with them. And so that's so much of a much more desirable type of move compared to the percentage of salary cap that Zach LaVine eats. And if you move off on Zach, it doesn't necessarily make you better for this year, but it certainly opens up your future and all the flexibility that comes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I get like sort of pigeonholed into this this person that doesn't like Zach LaVine, and that's not the case. Like I think.
I mean, sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry, James. I mean, I mentioned the percent to salary for the salary cap. He's 30%. He's almost 31% of the salary cap. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So my point with Zach is, number one, there are limitations to his game, right? Let's just be honest. He's not a good defender. But outside of that, I think he is a tremendous offensive player. And I actually like the fit with him and Domas as like a 1-2 punch more than I liked De'Aaron Fox and Domas as a 1-2 punch. I think their games complement each other better on the offensive end. On the defensive end, that's a whole different story. My issue with Zach is, number one, he's got a bunch of injuries throughout his career. But number two, it's exactly what Sean said. It's the money. Like if Zach LaVine made $30 million, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Everyone would be very excited about coming into this season with Zach LaVine as your starting shooting guard. But that's just not the way it goes. So like there's no way to move off of his money, like financially. The Kings can't do something crazy like stretch provision the guy and just pay $20 million a year for the next 5 years, like what the Suns just did with Bradley Beal, or the Bucks just did with Damian Lillard. Like that doesn't make enough sense. But I think if I'm the Kings right now, like before the start of the season, I think there are teams out there that would at least listen to a Zach LaVine trade, and I would circle a couple of players. And like I know when I was on the air today, someone brought up Lauri Markkanen. It's like, hey, can you get Lauri Markkanen for Zach LaVine and a couple of first-round picks? I got to be honest, I'm at least calling. Lauri Markkanen is 28 years old. He's got 4 years left on a contract that pays him like 44, 48, 50 something, and 60. But I would rather have 4 years of Lauri Markkanen as a perfect fit player next to Domas than, the next 2 years of Zach LaVine and opening up a position in the backcourt for Keon Ellis to move in the starting spot. Go ahead and sign Russell Westbrook at that point, and now you've got, your 5 guards with the players that you have, and then you have a natural transition for Keegan to move to the small forward spot. You go from being one of the smaller teams to a team that 6'8", 7 foot, and 6'10", 6'11". That's a good size front line. And so I like that idea. I don't know that Utah is up for trading Lauri Markkanen at this point, but they might be looking at that last 2 years of marketing going, I don't know if this is a good idea. And they might look at, the Minnesota first round pick, one of the other Kings first round picks, and say, okay, we would do that. And so that's where I think if I'm Scott Perry, I would still big game hunt at this point because there is time before to start a training camp and before, this thing really starts to roll. Does that make any sense at all to you guys? Or are you afraid of Laurie and his back injuries?
No, I mean, I think that makes sense. We're talking about it being a better fit for the Kings. I think that it wouldn't hurt to look more long term if you could. But I also think that it's hard to get that top end talent in the door in Sacramento. And I think that Laurie falls into that. He's an all-star that, like you mentioned, I think fits well offensively next to Domas, especially defensively. I worry still a little bit about how that works, but you get more size. You definitely need that on this team. You slide Keegan over to the 3. You have a bigger lineup, like you mentioned, in general. So I think something that could make sense. I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, as you said, from Utah's perspective, you got to entice them a little bit more. And depending on what that may be, like the Minnesota pick is kind of interesting to me of what that and could end up being. Where is Ant still going to be on that team, obviously, and unprotected? So, yeah, I mean, definitely something that I would definitely consider from the Kings.
I don't think Utah would be interested. Zach being 2 years older than Lauri Markkanen and still having 2 years remaining on his contract. Yes, it gets you off Lauri a little bit quicker, but I think Markkanen is just a more dynamic player that you can build around. I don't think the skill set that Zach LaVine has as an elite scorer, you can find elite scorers. It's not hard to find, especially with all the young pieces that they can add and draft picks, draft capital that they have. I don't think Danny Ainge is salivating for a elite scoring talent. I think he's looking at building a team. And so yes, I know it gets you off a little bit of that money a little quicker, but I just don't think it's quite quick enough. And I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze there.
As far as Utah's point.
For Utah.
Point of view.
Yeah, for Utah. Yeah. For Sacramento, no, it'd be a no-brainer. For Sacramento, I mean, that would be Markkanen would be almost he'd be in that probably maybe not the first tier of player that I'd love to put next to Domantas Sabonis. If you're going forward with Domas for the foreseeable future, which it appears they would be, but he'd be in that next tier. I think they'd be really, really good together. I think the two of them would complement each other so nice. And I think you can find a Zach LaVine light or comparable type of scoring player to piece around that. Even in the short term, you can get by with someone like Malik and DeRozan and things like that. But I think ultimately at that point, then you go try to find that true wing. Maybe that's Keegan. Maybe that he blossoms into that under that scenario. But long-winded way of saying it's a no-brainer for the Kings. If you're the Jazz, I don't think there's any way you do that.
Well, I think the only way you do it if you're the Jazz is because you're looking at, number one, the draft compensation, which they love draft compensation. But I think also you're looking at a player who has shown a long list of injuries, including back injuries that limited him greatly last year. And a trade like that would save, I don't know, like I just had the number pulled up. It would save them like $104 million on the back end. Like the last 2 years of marketing might not age well. And if you're a team that is trying to build something with young players, Laurie doesn't really make that much sense there either. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think if you can, it's possible Utah might look and say, hey, if we could get if we could save $100 million in 2 years, and then on top of that, pick up a couple of first round picks, then we would consider it. And just so I'm 100% transparent, that's a trade that someone brought up in the chatty house. It was not something that I've heard or that I'm presenting. It's just something that somebody else came up with.
I wouldn't paint Lauri Markkanen as having these injury concerns either. Like, I don't think that they're chasing teams away from him. I don't want to shape him as a player who's yes, he had a back issue this past year, but let's also be honest, Utah was not trying to win.
Yeah.
So,
he was a pretty hot commodity at the deadline.
And last summer as well. So let's not paint him as some fragile physical question going forward with his career, because I don't think any of that would be accurate.
Okay, so but just to clarify, Markkanen played 68 games as a rookie. He played 52 in his second season, 50, 51, 61, 66, 55, and 47. Like, the dude's missing 30 games a year. we're at least 25 games a year off most seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we can say, again, he's played 450 games in, let's see, 9 seasons. And, I don't know, what does
He's
that equate
preserved.
to?
He wouldn't chase me off. It wouldn't chase me off for trying to land him. I would have zero concern about his durability.
Okay.
60% of games.
Yeah, he's played 60%. I know 2 of those seasons are 72. So 82 times.
Oh, then it'd be a little more, yeah.
Times 7 plus 72 plus 72. So, oh, Jesus, I just messed that up.
Live math.
Somewhere around
Yeah,
70.
We get
60
it.
to
We
70.
get the point.
yeah, he's missed something like 200 plus games, right? I
Yeah.
don't know, close to that. Yeah, and that's tough. So I would at least, I mean, you have to be concerned with that, not because he's not a good enough player, but because his contract is 46, 46, 49, and 53. I mean, that's a lot.
I think he's somebody players would go after, and like from the Kings' perspective, as we mentioned, somebody they should be interested in. But you're probably wanting like a promising young player and some draft capital, an ideal return there from Utah's perspective. I don't know if taking on Zach LaVine's money to free up, like you said, the back end of that a little bit and some draft capital is going to be their best offer for Lauri Markkanen necessarily. So yeah, kind of a, it's tough to imagine that being their best offer, I guess I would say.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I'm willing to go Zach LaVine, Devin Carter, 2 first-round picks.
There you go.
There it is.
And then you hear dial tone.
Yeah.
The deal is done. Yeah. Then you hear like Lakers music because that's where he's calling next. Good old Danny Ainge.
What if De'Aaron Fox was still around? A little Fox for Markkanen?
Oh.
De'Aaron's not staying there if that's the case. He wouldn't re-sign in Utah if we were still in that timeline.
Oh, no, that's true.
No.
Yeah.
Well, he wouldn't need to. Like he, at that point, if you're trading him and he's the parameters where he'd only extend in Utah in San Antonio, well, then now he has this pick of the litter where he wants to go. He controls his own destiny as an unrestricted free agent. So,
just not going to make the money that he made.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be at a considerable discount, but at that point, you get to determine your own future.
Yeah, it kind of goes in to what's happening to Trae Young, where Atlanta's like, hey, we're good. You got a $49 million player option for next year. We don't need to tear up your contract to write a new one right now.
Right.
And Trae Young's like, I want my money. And it's like, yeah, Atlanta's good. Just like the Kings kind of felt the same way when they were offered the potential to trade for Trae Young. So let's just get to the next step, which is if the Kings don't make a move right now, just how comfortable are you guys with this group of players that they're going to walk into training camp with?
What do you mean? Like from a competitive standpoint? Like well, no. I mean, we've talked about it long enough. Like I don't think any of us feel good about their chances. I think, we're almost a broken record. They can be a competitive group that can, get by and we see the pathway of them having success in the regular season. If that's going to go into the postseason, they're going to need to play some big minutes and rely on some guys that need to stay healthy. They need to be durable and they need to put up numbers and all kinds of stuff. I think they can be a competitive team. I just don't think that the way the West is, I don't think they're going to be a top 5-6 team in the West. I think, if anything, for all things to go right, you might be hovering around 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe lower than that. So there's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of talent, but I think there's also kind of a we've seen this before. We know what this looks like. And, I think if you're a Kings fan, you're hoping Zach LaVine has the type of season that he did last year, where he's efficient and he's effective and putting up numbers and all that. But where's the defense coming from? How are you going to be able to be a physical team, make stops, and get wins in this Western Conference? And that could be tough. So you're probably a team that's going to be hovering right around 500, maybe a little bit above. I mean, I think that would be a best case scenario. And if you can do that, maybe get into a month or two into the season as you approach the trade deadline, see how the landscape shifts, and hope to be able to pounce when the time is right.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree much with that. I think competitive is the right way to say it. I think that they're going to be a bad defensive team and probably a solid offense. At least I still think the offensive blueprint is there a little bit, even with the spacing concerns that we mentioned, but being able to play fast. I think Dennis helps you do that a little bit more that you were missing when De'Aaron was moved on from at the deadline there. But it's a wide range, but I think that after the top tier of the West, like it's probably somewhere from 6 to 12 that we're talking about from the Kings. But I think that can be encouraging for some teams, like a San Antonio in that group sees how next year they could take that next step. It's hard to, you could see that for Minnesota, and Minnesota may end up being in that 1 to 4. But some of these young teams, like I guess Dallas doesn't qualify as young, but they have the upside hope of Cooper Flag, like being in this 6 to 12 is fine and makes for a okay season where I think night to night they could beat anybody on any given night. They are talented enough that they can have a good night and beat anybody. They're going to have stretches throughout a season, week and a half stretch where they look like one of the best teams in the league just for a moment, because their offense is clicking on all cylinders. But I struggle to see how this 6 to 12 is going to be that beneficial for the long term and where they continue to grow in the following seasons. So this, I think, a fairly mediocre team in the Western Conference. It's really relying on its offense, just like we've seen for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think like the top tier in the Western Conference are crazy right now. I mean, OKC, Denver, Houston, the Clippers are all phenomenal. I think right after that, then you start getting into the Lakers, Minnesota. Even Memphis should be okay. They lost Desmond Bain, but they were able to reload a little bit. I just think it's going to be really tough. The Kings are going to be competing with some teams like, again, like San Antonio, like Portland. I don't think Utah is going to be in that stretch at all, but like the Dallases of the world. I think they're
New Orleans.
No, I don't think New Orleans. I don't think Phoenix is going to be any good.
What teams are they better than? Do we comfortably feel like they're better than?
I don't know if I'm ready today. I don't know.
Utah, New Orleans. Phoenix, Portland. Yeah.
That's it.
I think,
right.
but here, I guess we'll make this because we don't have much time here. We'll do the business of basketball. There it is. If you're the Kings and you're looking at, again, Portland, you're looking at, Memphis, and the way that they're able to squeeze out like an extra 4 or 5 wins last year, the year before for Memphis as well, but just by playing hard and playing a specific style, like it feels like that's what Doug Christie is trying to like lock in on, like watching the summer league squad, how hard they played, the intensity that they played on the defensive end and on the offensive end. I don't know how that's going to translate to, again, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, Keegan Murray, Malik Monk, like this group of players that are going to play. But how much do you think that, trying to develop that identity right now as a team that plays 48 and is going to punch you in the face every single night, how much can that like impact this team? And not only that, but do you think Doug has a chance of pulling that off in year one?
I mean, I think that's where you could see the guard depth helping a little bit. And we mentioned earlier how some of those guards are fairly good defenders. Like, just be kind of maniacs out there on the perimeter. Be super physical. Be trying to force turnovers. I think that's the best way to do that. I think back to like early Chris Finch, Minnesota Timberwolves. They were just causing havoc more than anything. It's not even necessarily like they had overly talented defensive players out there, but just be really physical. Like when we saw the rules change midseason, what was that, 2 years ago? And they took their physicality to another level. I think that you kind of have to embrace that. If Malik gets in foul trouble, then all right, we're going to go to Keon. Like Keon, be up in this guy. And worst case, we got Devin Carter as a fallback right here. Like I think that you're going to have to be overly physical defensively. I think that getting that identity and getting everybody to buy into that level of physicality will help. but you're still not going to be a good defense if you're able to do that. I just think it could help you from being, horrible on certain nights, which is still going to be the case. But I think embracing that physicality at point of attack helps out Domas in the back line and could benefit the team a little. It never hurts to have a little bit of heart to your team.
Sean?
I don't know. I mean, I'm still trying to look back at those teams and see who they're better than. I don't know that I'm comfortable in saying in August. Like, if New Orleans is healthy, I don't know that they're totally better than New Orleans. To be honest,
is there any team you're comfortable with right now, like Utah?
Yeah, like Phoenix. I see Phoenix, Utah. I'm okay there. Portland, I'm leaning towards yes. I think that those are probably the obvious, but I could see Portland being a tough out a little bit. I mean, maybe look, I just think that there's so much that can go wrong for any of these teams, and I lump the Kings in that category. Like, an injury away, every team's an injury away, but like Sacramento needs a lot to go right for them to have success this year, in my opinion, if this roster stays as is. And so I don't think it would be very difficult for them to remain in the chase and keep their head around the 8, 9, 10, 12 mark, 11, 12 mark. Like, obviously keeping around the 8, 9, and 10 would be more preferable for postseason, but I think that's where they're going to be. And I think they'll be able to sustain that. Beyond that, I don't know. I think that they're going to need a lot to go right. And I think they're going to need some guys to take some major steps. Particularly on the physicality role. I mean, I share the same concerns as you guys. I think largely the biggest concern for me is their lack of physicality and length from their bigs when it comes to a lot of these teams that they're going to be going up against night in and night out. So I also factor a first-time head coach into that. That just is what it is. Hopefully he can get the guys to buy in quickly. There's implementing a lot of changes. I mean, I know he had so many months that he had, but he didn't have his people. He didn't have his entire DNA on this team. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's just a lot of question marks, and I think the safe money, if you're a betting person, is to take the under because, like I said, I think for them to find success, a lot has to go right.
I agree. The margin for error is extremely thin, and I think Doug can have some sort of impact on that. But at the same time, getting veteran players to buy into something like that over an 82-game schedule just really isn't that simple, especially with the way that the early season is just kind of buried against them. And they have so many difficult matchups early in the season that, if your first 20 games, you're looking at, 5-6 games under 500 with like a hill to climb, that could get a little dicey. It's easier to get players to buy in when you're winning than when you're scrambling and you're trying to fight through an early tough schedule. All right, we got to cut this thing short this week. What do we got for final thoughts? Brenden, what do you got?
Headed out to Sutter Health Park to go see Scooble pitch in today. Maybe I should say that I'm going out there to see Nick Kurtz and the A's, I guess, but honestly going out there to see Scooble, like I think a lot of locals around here tend to do. So excited for that. And I guess final Kings thought would be that I also think a noticeable X factor this year is just clutch performances. Like, you still have DeMar DeRozan on this team, and when you're in a very what's expected to be a jumbled up portion of a conference, winning close games makes all the difference. And you do still have DeMar on this team. Like, part of the reason the Beam team excelled to that 3 seed was because De'Aaron won Clutch Player of the Year and carried them to a lot of close wins. So just something that could make a difference there.
I feel the same about Malik. Malik has always been clutch for this team. Yeah. Sean, what do you got for final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm debating whether or not I'll be one of those media members to parachute into the Kings or to the A's game to watch Tarek Skubal pitch for the Tigers to open up that series. A's have been playing like remarkably well lately considering I know it's dog days of summer, but all these if I was talking to a couple of their players before their trip, and Lawrence Butler literally was like, yeah, if we didn't lose that 20 straight, we'd probably be top in the division or right hovering around. And I was kind of like, no, I see where you're going with that. I don't know if I'd agree, but it's funny because, I mean, from that standpoint, I know it's a little baseball talk here, but like we were looking at that first time that the Mariners had come to town and the competitive nature of those games, and to see them have that competitive nature again outside of Sunday. The Friday Saturday game in Seattle this past weekend were both decided by one game. I mean, these are really high level basketball or baseball, considering you've got so many young players on the A's. So you get a nice little peek into what potentially could be with the A's if they keep everything together. But yeah, that 20 game slide is a little tough to say. That's where your season fell apart.
Yeah, if only
If not for that.
Yeah,
I think they went 3 straight. Well, no, they went, I think 3-21 over a 24 game stretch. They lost 11, I think, in a row, and then won one, and then lost a bunch. Yeah, what a mess. Yeah, a whole different season if that wouldn't have happened. Final thoughts. We're gonna ramp up here in the coming weeks. We've got media day and training camp. Media day, I think, it's the last Monday of September. Training camp will start right after that, and we'll hit the ground running. But I don't think this team is done. I think they're going to keep trying to tweak things and see if they can come in with a little bit more of a more balanced lineup. I just don't know that can happen like overnight. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Again, we'll be back next week. We'll have more stuff to talk about, hopefully. Maybe there will be a trade. Maybe we'll start breaking down individual positions and how we think that those will play out this season.
And maybe horns will grow out of your head. You know,
that's
like
true.
There's just anything can happen. The maybes. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Anything can happen. Sweet. Cool. That's gonna do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Thanks for tuning in. So for KCRA 3, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you next week.